Uh, so welcome all the participants to this VCM organized by the Vidhannagar Study Circle. We have today with us our learned speaker Ayush Goel with us. He is speaking about the income tax new compliances, and the glitches we are facing nowadays to overcome the problems we are facing. Ayush will guide us in this matter. And before that, Manoj is here. Manoj, can you hear me? All right, we will start as the chairman has another session to join. I think we will do the inaugural session by our chairman as a keynote address and Devan Patra, who is the secretary. Both Sauji, you are welcome to our study circle, and you start with your delivery. Sauji, are you there?
Unmute yourself, Chairman sir, please.
Chairman sir, can you hear me?
Yes, I am hearing you. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Suman, for giving me the opportunity to speak before all the members. And at the outset, I should congratulate Vidhannagar CA Study Circle for organizing this program on new changes under Income Tax Act, because there are many changes. And at the outset, respected CA Devan Patra, Secretary, Eastern India Regional Council, CA Suman Chaudhary, Convener of Vidhannagar CA Study Circle, Partha Pratim, all Deputy Convener, and Speaker CA Ayush Goel. And I have seen Ashok Samanta ji and Manas Chandra Ghosh ji and my dear members. Good evening to all of you. At the outset, I thank Suman Chaudhary, convener of the study circle, has invited me as a chairman of Eastern India Regional Council. For that, I should thank and compliment the Vidhannagar Study Circle. Big compliments from Eastern India Regional Council. Friends, today's topic is new compliances under Income Tax Act. Friends, you have seen after 2013, after enactment of New Company Act, there are a lot of changes occurred in Companies Act, Income Tax Act, GST, and accounting standard on auditing, in many revenue related acts. If you see, every year there are many changes and new circulars are coming. And at the same time, there are a lot of technological changes has also occurred. Earlier, everything was manual. Now, everything you have to file through computer. So, and also method of submission is also changed day by day, because Income Tax Department is changing the software very frequently. That's why we have to change ourselves. We have to update ourselves in both area, in the area of provisions of and acts, and also technical changes. Friends, because of these changes, many opportunities are coming to chartered accountants. And very recently, Revenue Ministry has introduced faceless assessment. And now you have to comply all the queries of the income tax department through computer, and initially members are facing problem, but after some time they will be habituated with this system. But finally, I can say it is very difficult for the senior professionals because they have started their career in manual accounting and manual filing of the return. So it must keep them the difficulty, and my sincere advice to all of them to hire young chartered accountants, train them about the provision, and you also train them with your proper knowledge and experience, so that blending of experience and with the new changes and technological knowledge of the young members, things will be comfortable for all the professionals. Friends, I'll not take more time because all of us are very eager to listen the speaker, Sri Ayush Goyal. He is a very busy speaker, and very recently we also invited him for a deliberation in the income tax, and I have seen the presentation was very excellent. My compliment to Ayush for such deliberation. And finally, I thank the Vidhan Nagar Study Circle for inviting me to this VCM on new compliances under income tax. Thank you. Thank you all the members. I have to leave because I have to join another seminar organized by the EIRC. Thank you, sir. Namaskar.
Thank you, Chairman, sir, for sharing your valuable input to the members. Has the chairman concluded?
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes.
Thank you, Chairman, for your valuable words that will be enriching the members at large. And next, I will ask Devan, do you have time? Then we can ask Manojda to give a brief introduction of our study circle. Then we can come
Yeah,
back to
sure,
you.
sure. No problem. No problem.
All right. Thank you, Chairman. We know you have a busy schedule. You are
Okay, okay. Thank you.
So thank you for taking out your time and coming to the study circle and give your presence.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, from our study circle. Manojda, I'll request Manojda to do this introduction of the study circle.
সাউন্ড অফ হয়ে যাচ্ছে। হ্যালো,
না আমরা শুনতে পাচ্ছি, কিন্তু আপনার আওয়াজটা একটু আস্তে আসছে, বোধহয় মোবাইলটা একটু কাছে নিয়ে নিন।
yeah, good evening everybody. On behalf of Vidhan Nagar Chartered Accountant Study Circle, which was created nearly 22 years back, I invite you. I am welcoming all of the delegates, all the listeners, and the institute's office bearers to this occasion. And I also appreciate Mr. Ayush Goyal's presence, who is a regular speaker in various seminars which I have already heard, and I am really happy to share as he's sharing his knowledge with us. I am also welcoming our chairman, Mr. Sunil Sahu, and our Mr. Devan Patro, our council member, and I hope the program will continue properly and we will be enriched with the knowledge that Mr. Ayush Goyal will spread among us. And I request Mr. Ayush Goyal if he could come and start the thing for our knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Manasda. I would request Devan, though I will not request, he is the boy of the study circle also. He is also one of the member of a Vidhannagar study circle. So Devan, you are welcome and give your keynote address, please.
Okay. So, a very good evening to everyone. The chairman EIRC in absentia, the convener and the deputy convener of the study circle, CA Shuman Chaudhary and CA Partha Pratim Paul, CA Manoj Ghosh, a very senior member of the study circle and a past leader of the study circle, and all the other past leaders of the study circle, the delegates who have joined this meeting. I'll not take much time. I know you are eager to listen to the speaker, CA Ayush Goel, who would be taking you through the recent and current income tax compliances that are very important at this point of time. And I think more sessions like this should be held because there are so many new things that are taking place, and if changes are there every day, something or the other is changing. But since I have been given this opportunity, I would like to highlight something else. Friends, we all know that the history of the chartered accountancy profession in India, with the beginning of the institute in 1949, has come a long way. The institute was formed basically for the audit profession. And with time, we have seen that the wealth has been slowly getting in single hands. Slowly, the wealth has been transferred from public to a very few hands. So with that, various big corporations have come up, and with the opening of the economy in the 1990s, even the multinational companies have come in. With that, what happened? The industry understood that the chartered accountants who were the auditors have skills in all the areas of commerce, that is finance, taxation, maybe indirect tax also. Indirect tax took some time to take place in India because service tax was only introduced in the 1990s. And today we know with GST, there is a lot that indirect tax professionals can also do. So with time, what happened? The chartered accountants were also taken in the industry. They were employed. And the audit profession, the face of the audit profession kept changing. Let me tell you, friends, 340,000 chartered accountants are there in India today. Out of that, only 140,000 are in practice. And even in this 140,000, you would find many chartered accountants who have actually been in the industry and have joined practice only after retirement. So, and we also see from the UDIN Directorate that only 1 lakh chartered accountants are generating UDIN. This signifies that out of 340,000 chartered accountants, only 1 lakh chartered accountants are only doing the assurance function or certification function. So that means the world is changing, the economy is changing, and the requirement that is expected from us chartered accountants is also changing. And we are also seeing a huge change in the technological arena. The technology is changing the face of the profession also, because in audit we are finding that now forensic audit will be important in the coming days, and the traditional audit will not be valued anymore. Then even in the income tax, we are seeing that assessment, then appeals, these are becoming faceless. So with the advent of faceless assessments and appeals, the drafting skills of the chartered accountants will get more important. We all know that it was very difficult even to make the assessing officer understand something when he is sitting in front of you. Now, I do not know how will they understand anything and how will they do the assessment. So they might even go for addition because they will not be able to understand, and they will be fearing that it's better for me to make an addition than to allow it to the assessee. So there are various trends. We also have to equip ourselves accordingly. And friends, recently the RBI circular that has come, that has actually paved a way for many firms who will be getting works. We know that the private banks were being audited by the Big Four, but now the RBI is saying that even the private banks' central statutory audit has to be done through the RBI mode, the CAG mode. The NBFCs have to be audited, and even the cooperative banks. So this will allow many mid-sized firms to get good audit. But then you have to build your firm to that level. Otherwise, you are not going to get that. So if you are a proprietor and you are doing practice in a specialized field, like you are appearing only in front of the tribunal, or maybe you are only a GST practitioner and slowly you are planning to appear in the tribunals there. So then it's fine. You can carry on as a proprietor. But if you are planning for audits, then do not rely on statutory bank branch audits anymore. The branches are reducing day by day. The opportunities are reducing. I said there are 1,40,000 chartered accountants. Out of that, there are only 90,000 firms, out of which 67,000 are proprietorship firms. So while there are only 30,000 branches to be audited, how can you expect all the firms to get the audit? So the days have changed and we have to change ourselves. We have to create larger firms where you can have partners from different fields. Someone will look after income tax. To begin with, it may seem difficult, but you have to start somewhere. If you do not start, then you will face problem in the future. Today, you may not reap the benefit when you start building this firm. So you call your friend who is doing GST, you are an income tax practitioner, someone wants to have the passion for doing forensic audits, you bring him. Maybe you will not have that much work now, but these people will bring their works, they will do their own works. But slowly, in 3 to 5 years, your firm will get a position where you can get the good audits. So that's how we have to plan. And as chartered accountants, you have understood the essence of my deliberation. I do not think I need to deliberate on this any further. And it's rather we must hear Ayush so that we can prepare ourselves for the next few months where we are going to face so many challenges, not because of the taxation law, but because of the income tax side. So thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Devan. So elaborating many things about the current scenario. But one thing is that till today evening, everybody is receiving the love letters from the income tax department. Though when going to the site, you cannot find anything. Many clients are in audit. If their track record, because the government was a notion of paperless office. And so people was now turning out to be a paperless mentality. And after converting into a paperless mentality, right now they cannot find anything from their back end. So think of the situation, the people who are receiving 148 and they cannot find even the returns which they have uploaded. The entire report, even the acknowledgement number of the last 5 or 6 years, somebody was thinking they were habituated because it was been available from the site readily. Now, when they're asking for 148, even the entire return they're asking for, even they cannot have their own, they're asking to revise it. So I think many of the consultant or our CA friends are facing the same problems. I request Devan to take up the issues with ICI if they can stop for the time being for issuing of this 148, just as a gesture to give relief to the members and at a large to the society, because when the society gets disturbed, it gives disturbance to us. So in this pandemic period, when we are working with a limited capacity of students or article or staffs, so it will be a great help if a institute can give any representation to the institute, because as a society, when they are getting this burden, they at the same moment they just call up, and we have nothing to do because we also do not have these back papers of 3 or 4 or 5 years back, because we have also converted ourselves into paperless office. So
in fact, in the
thank you,
meantime,
Devan. Not taking much of the time. Hello.
In the meantime,
Okay.
actually, the finance
We have
ministry had already asked ICI to form
most dynamic and young. Pardon?
Carry on, Sumanda, carry on.
Yeah. So today we have one of the dynamic speaker who is very busy with his busy schedule of speaking in all and round of all the study circles and even for the EIRC and ICI. So once again, Ayush, thank you for accepting our invitation to speak on the topic. And I will just give a brief introduction to the persons who are new to you, because everybody knows you very well. He is a very dynamic and young speaker who has qualified in 2012, and he with a 39th rank in All India and scored second highest in the paper of direct taxation. No, scored highest, not second highest. Sorry, he got the highest in the direct taxation. He has also scored All India rank 14 in his PCC exams, and there also he was awarded with the best paper in taxation and has received various awards from the institute. From time to time, he has also qualified in CS and CMA examination with gold medal in each of them, including AIR 1 and rank in all levels. Thank you. Welcome, Ayush. Ayush is the holder of Bachelor degree in Commerce from St. Xavier's College under University of Calcutta. He is an alumni of Birla High School, Kolkata. After clearing his CA, Ayush got associated with IBM as a business solution consultant, has provided solution to various clients in India and outside India, including DHL, NOL, Birla Tyres. During his 2.5 years of tenure with IBM, Ayush has been certified as a SAP business consultant. He is presently engaged with Bash and Company LLP Chartered Accountant as a designated partner and head the direct tax division of the firm across the country. He has a niche in the assessment and appellate matters and has successfully represented various clients in front of various income tax authorities. He is the associate as a certified mentor with various startups and incubators like Neolip, Calcutta Angels Network, etc., and also a motivational speaker and a visiting faculty for various colleges and institutions, including JD Birla. He has been traveling all over the country as a resource person, speakers, and has been invited by various institutes, including ICI, ICMI, our own institute, and various branches and study circles. He has been a regular contributor to various forums and journals, numerous studies circle in the form of articles or various subjects and topics. He has conducted over 150 seminars and workshops across the country, and numerous articles gets published on a regular basis on various forums. He loves teaching and training and has been a mentor of various successful C aspirants. He is regular organizing various exam-oriented sessions, mentoring sessions, and mock tests for the benefit of the various C aspirants. He loves for students and also lead to his involvement as a member of the GMCS committee of EIRC for 1718 and involved with direct tax committee of various study cycles. And I must also include that he has been a regular contributor to our newsletter of Accountants Library and is very punctual before the due date as a coach committee member and as a joint secretary. Even before the due date, his articles comes to our hand. With this, all yours, Ayush, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you, Sumanda, and thank you, everyone. First of all, at the outset, I'd like to apologize because today I'm having a very bad throat, so probably you hear a lot of coughing from me during the course, but nothing will bar me from sharing whatever important things we are required to discuss here, because as Debayan, Sunil Sahu sir and Sumanda has adequately put in, it is very essential for us to understand the key changes which are taking place in this dynamic environment of income tax, right? And each of these key changes are very critical in its own way and needs to be analyzed on a point-to-point basis. So starting off, I think this 194Q is visible to everyone. Great. So first, let us talk about this much talked about session 194Q vis-a-vis an existing session which came into effect from the October 2020. So that was section 206C1H. So a lot of us are facing issues with regards to these particular two sections, whether they are overlapping. If not, then who comes first? So this is a race particularly where we need to determine who will come first, or who is the bigger or the dominating brother of the two, right? Why I'm calling them as a brother, we'll also discuss that, and we'll also discuss who is the dominating brother and how that dominance will be established, right? So first let us have a brief reading. First, let us have a brief reading of the 194Q from the Act itself to understand it on a verbatim basis. So the Act says any person being a buyer. So first things first, this section 194Q is applicable to a buyer, whereas the existing section 206C1H, I think most of us have by now understood or might have applied for a specific assessees the application of 206C1H. So we all know it was applicable for a seller. So here it is applicable for a buyer who is responsible for paying any sum to any resident. So the word used is resident. So the person buying from a resident and paying thereof is covered under 194Q. Okay. Herein after in this section referred as the seller. For purchase of any goods of the value or aggregate of such value exceeding 50 lakh rupees. Here comes the critical point. While discussing this with 206C1H, we need to get this confusion cleared that in 206C1H, the essential criteria was the receipt of money over and above 50 lakhs of rupees. Even though during the year, if you have sold sold goods worth rupees 2 crore rupees, and if you have received only 40 lakh rupees during the year, then section 206C1H would not have applied. Am I clear, or am I under does this make sense to everyone? In 206C1H, the essential criteria was the receipt of money over and above 50 lakhs. As I shared my example, supposedly I am a seller and I have sold goods worth rupees 2 crore rupees during the year, but out of that 2 crores I receive only 40 lakhs during the year. So will 206C1H apply to me in that case? I'm talking about a particular buyer in this case. So will 206C1H apply to me in this case? Anyone would like to elaborate on this or maybe discuss on this? Probably, I think all of us might be saying no, because Avinashji has said a yes. Avinashji, I'd like to reconfirm to you that 206C1H was applicable only on the receipt basis, receipt of money exceeding 50 lakhs. Supposedly, if we are receiving 51 lakhs, then the TCS needs to be collected on the amount exceeding 50 lakhs, that is for 1 lakhs only. Whereas in 194Q, it talks about the amount of goods purchased, irrespective whether the payment is made or not, because it says shall at the time of credit of such sum to the account of the seller, or at the time of payment thereof by any mode, whichever is earlier, right? So payment or credit, whichever is earlier. So in this case, if a buyer buys a goods worth rupees 2 crore rupees and does not even pay a single penny out of that in a current year, even then it is liable for him to deduct TDS of a specified rate of 0.1% on the balance 1.5 crores, that is the amount exceeding 50 lakh rupees. Okay, so this is the second key difference between 194Q and 206C1H. Right? For this purpose of section, buyer means a person whose total sales, gross receipts or turnover from the business carried on by him exceed 10 crore rupees during the financial year immediately preceding the financial year in which purchase of goods is carried out. So this is similar to 206C1H. Why? Because in this in that 206C1H also it was said it is applicable to a seller whose turnover exceeds 10 crore rupees in the previous year. And for here, it is applicable for a buyer whose turnover exceeds 10 crore rupees in the previous year. not being a person of central government or notified in the official gazette, that is something which we can understand theoretically, right? So the next point is where any sum referred to it is credited to any account, whether called suspense account, then also it shall be deducted on the date of credit. Important point is this. Point number 5, if you can see, the provisions of this section shall not apply to a transaction on which, right? It shall not apply on a transaction on which tax is deductible under any provision of the act. Means TDS is applicable under any other provision of the act. Tax is collectible under the provisions of 206C other than this point, other than a transaction with subsection 1H of 206C applies. So it means if you read it jointly, it means that this section will not apply where any other section of TDS applies or where any other section of TCS applies barring one. Means in cases where 206C1H is applicable, this TDS section shall also be applicable. So then it must come to our mind that, okay, so then there might be a situation where both 194Q and 206C1H is applicable. Is that so? From this from this line, do we get that particular understanding? Because it clearly states that this 194Q will be applicable where 206C1H is applicable. Now let us understand a different or let us go to that different section for you to understand. Right, so this is 206C1H, right? As we're talking, every person being a seller who any amount exceeding 50 lakhs, I'm not going into that. What I want to show you is provisions of this subsection shall not apply if the buyer is liable to deduct tax at source under any other provision of this act or the goods purchased by him from the seller has deducted such amount. Which means that if the TDS has been deducted, then TCS will not be collected, which was not the scenario in 194Q. So 194Q was an overriding provision to 206C1H, which said that even if 206C1H is applicable, 194Q shall be applicable. Whereas in 206C1H, it is written that if 194Q is applicable, then 206C1H shall not apply. So when we consolidate these two understandings and imply our mind on this, so what we'll understand is that where in a case where both these sections might be applicable, 194Q and 206C1H, then 194Q will prevail. And 194Q shall come into picture and 206C1H shall take a back step. Does this make sense after we have seen both the sections? Right. Why I was calling them a big brother? Because so why I was calling them a big brother? Because identically both the transactions or both the sections are applicable on a similar set of transactions. Being a transaction of purchase and a sale, the amount is also similar of rupee exceeding 50 lakhs. The difference being one is applicable, the TDS being on a payment or credit, whichever is earlier, and the sale being applicable on the receipt basis. So now let us take an example. The example being, suppose there is a person who, Mr. A, who buys goods from Mr. B worth rupees 57 lakh rupees, and both Mr. A and Mr. B are having a turnover greater than 10 crore rupees. So in this case, who will be liable to deduct or collect, and what amount? Zero payment has been made. I'll repeat the question for everyone's convenience. Mr. A buys goods from Mr. B worth 57 lakhs on credit basis. No payment has been made. Mr. A and Mr. B both are having turnover greater than 10 crores in the last year. Then who shall be liable under these compliances and under what section? Correct. So rightly said by rightly said. So Mr. A will be required to deduct TDS under 194Q on 7 lakhs. Perfect. Now supposedly, I twist this question. Mr. A does not have a turnover greater than 10 crores. Then who shall be liable? Remember, I have said that no payment has been made. Navanshji, I said that no payment has been made. Then yes, so rightly said, no one will be applicable. Right, so I think this particular section is clear. If anyone has any doubt on this, we can have that taken up. Otherwise, I'll go into the final details of compliances for this. Okay, so whether the turnover means sales including GST or excluding GST, for convenience sake, let me explain. While we are referring to 194Q, we have a adequate circular. Govardhan ji is written including, but I wish to differ. In case of TCS, it is including, because in case of TCS, it has been clearly said that it is on the receipt amount, irrespective whether it includes GST or not. But while we deduct TDS, it is always on the invoice value and means on the value excluding GST. Right. So Namanji has now correctly said TCS is including and TDS is excluding, because TCS, it has been clearly said that it is on the receipt amount, irrespective what that receipt amount consists of. But TDS is only on the invoice value before taxation. So I think that point is also taken care of. Any other discussion on this point?
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
I have a query. Suppose there is a state excise,
Right.
West Bengal state excise. So is being charged. So whether TDS will be applicable on state excise charges or not?
Sir, TDS is generally applicable on the taxable value, not the value including tax.
Okay. So tax will be including every tax.
Yes,
Whether
yes.
it is GST or whether it is state excise duty or whether it is central excise duty
Yes,
on
sir.
certain item like alcoholic liquor or okay. Okay.
Great. So I think that covers. Now, one question which comes to everyone's mind, that how, like supposedly I was in place of Mr. B. In the example, Mr. A has sold a goods to Mr. A has bought goods from Mr. B worth 57 lakhs and has also made the payment. And now I was in place of Mr. B. So how will I know whether I need to collect TCS under 206C1H or not? Any references or anyone who would like to discuss their views on this before I actually give my views on that? The question is clear. Mr. A has bought goods from Mr. B worth 57 lakhs and has made payment thereof during the year. So now Mr. A and Mr. B are in a dilemma that who needs to do what. Both are having a turnovers of 10 crores. So Mr. A knows that I need to deduct TDS, but Mr. B is unaware of the Mr. A's turnover. Right? So then who should take an action?
Mr. A.
Correct. Why? Can anyone please tell? Because Mr. A knows that I need to deduct TDS. Then why should he take an action? Why not Mr. B?
Because if he doesn't take the action, then he will be his purchase will be taxable and under 30% slab.
Purchase will be taxable under 30% and
It will be disallowed. It will be disallowed in the income tax.
why he'll deduct TDS?
No, if he doesn't deduct TDS.
See, he knows that he will deduct TDS because his turnover is exceeding 10 crore rupees, and a knowledgeable chartered accountant whom he is consulting has told him that if your turnover is exceeding 10 crore rupees, you need to deduct TDS irrespective of the TCS provisions. So now he is sitting comfortable and he knows that I need to deduct my TDS. So then he will deduct TDS and there will be no disallowance of 30%. Then what is the essence or what is the importance of that action being taken by him? To inform Mr. B.
Might be that Mr. B doesn't charge TCS on the invoice.
Exactly. Because that TCS will ultimately also form tax credit of Mr. A and will be blocked in his name till his return filing. So there will be double blocking of working capital in form of TDS as well as TCS.
Sir, I have a question. My question is, suppose A did not deduct TCS, and according to
Deduct TCS or collect TCS?
Mr. A, Mr. A
Deduct
had not
TDS.
deducted. Yeah, Mr. A had not deducted the TDS, and now the income tax department is saying that 30% of the purchase will be disallowed by this section. But suppose if Mr. B collect TCS and deposit the TCS on behalf of Mr. And deposit it to the government, can then also Mr. A is liable to have a disallowance of 30% of the purchases?
Yes, sir. The reason being, in this case, assuming Mr. A, the buyer, had a turnover of 10 crores, then he was liable under 194Q to deduct TDS. And he did not deduct TDS. So he will be treated as an assessee in default, irrespective of the fact that the person on the other side has collected TDS. That will only help him to get a certificate that the other person has taken that income in his books and then he obtain that form 26A and not to be treated as an assessee in default.
Again, sir, suppose if A and B both has not deducted TDS and TCS, will the penalty will be borne by both A and B?
No.
On the same amount?
No. Who was liable? First, we need to understand that who is liable. Is it liable?
Mr. A was liable. Mr. A was liable.
So if Mr. A is liable, then he has to face the penalty. Why will Mr. B take the brunt?
Because I think that as per in the 194, it is written that the liability has to be collected and deposited to the government. The tax has to be deducted and paid. So he has not deducted the tax, not paid the tax.
So that is
Mr.
A, na? Mr. B
Yeah.
does not come into picture in that. So Mr.
Okay,
A will
so-
face the music.
Okay. So Mr. B will not be immune from any liable interest or penal action.
No.
Mr. B.
Let me take this question in another way for all of us to understand. Supposedly, Mr. A and Mr. B, Mr. A being the buyer, Mr. B being the seller, Mr. A has a turnover exceeding 10 crore rupees, does not deduct TDS. Does that make Mr. B liable to collect TCS?
I think yes.
The answer is no.
Okay.
See, I've kept this 206C open, provided further that the provisions of this section shall not apply if the buyer is liable to deduct TDS under any provision.
And has deducted such amount. See the last word, sir. And has deducted.
Sir, I agree, but
Ayush ji,
Huh.
I have gone through the seminar of Mr. Jayesh Gupta as well. He said the same thing, that if the tax has liable to be deducted but has not deducted, then Mr. B arises the liability on Mr. B to collect the TCS.
No,
And
but
so the reconciliation of the books matters for every 3 months, so that if the TDS has not been deducted, TCS, but that doesn't give the opportunity to Mr. A to say that a TCS provision has been activated. His expenses will be disallowed, but Mr. B will be saved from the consequences. This is what I had. Might be I am wrong in this.
no,
But
sir.
this is-
What you are telling, I am also telling that
Okay.
the initial liability in that case of Mr. A will always be there, because
always be there.
yes. So that is
Hello,
what I am
sir.
also saying. I also second that thing, that TCS liability might arise, but that liability is only subsequent to the liability of TDS.
Hello, sir.
Okay.
I have a view, sir. Actually, if the information is not conveyed to B, how the B will know that TCS liability will not arise? That
Exactly,
the
sir,
turnover of A has
that
passes
is
10 crores.
I understand your point, sir. That is why, as
And
Navanji
then
was
he has
correct,
to add the TCS in the cell bill. And if it is not confronted by A, then he has to collect the TCS. No.
so the requirement of TCS does not arise on sale bill. That all the clients are doing only for their convenience purpose. First thing. Second thing, I agree to your point that once Mr. A has communicated to Mr. B that I will be deducting TDS, and you are not required to deduct TDS,
Exactly. sir.
collect TCS,
Please collect
then
TCS.
the primary owner stays with Mr. A, and that's why we are saying that the disallowance or the penalty or the interest stays with Mr. A. But how does Mr. B note will be happening on two levels? First, if there is a payment being made, then Mr. B needs to check whether that payment is excluding TDS or including TDS.
Exactly.
Secondly, they need to have a reconciliation, as correctly pointed out, on a periodical basis to understand, like whenever the payment is made, they might have asked or seek a confirmation from Mr. A that whether this payment is after deducting TDS or before deducting TDS. Because the requirement is here is deducting such amount, not paying, deducting and paying. Supposedly, Mr. A is paying 57 lakhs to Mr. Supposedly, Mr. A is paying 57 lakhs to Mr. B, and out of that 7 lakhs, he has deducted 0.1 TDS. If that is communicated to Mr. B, the case is over for Mr. B.
Yes, sir. And sir, it's a common practice now. We add TCS on the sale bill and collect that amount from the.
Sir, I told you that is being done for all the cases, most of the cases, even for RSSEs, they are doing it that way, because otherwise the entire gamut of compliances falls on its face. Because otherwise the process of issuing debit and credit notes are a tiresome process. That's why, as a practice, they are issuing it. They are taking it in the invoice only. But
Exactly.
let me share another example. Supposedly, I am raising an invoice of 60 lakhs, and according to this practice, I am collecting TCS of 0.1% on 60 lakhs. But for that 60 lakhs, in this particular year, I am receiving 40 lakhs, and in the next financial year, I am receiving 20 lakhs. So was I ever liable to collect that TCS?
No, never.
We
Not
were
liable
never
to.
liable to collect that TCS, but still we have collected it only as a practice module. So these are the shortcomings, because see, if the buyer agrees to pay, you are in safe hands, you collect and pay, because you are just working as a pure agent. You are collecting it from your buyer and depositing it with the government on behalf of the buyer. You are not.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, please finish, please, after you are done.
So you are, if the buyer pays, then it's okay. You issue it in on the invoice, no one will question. The problem will arise where the buyer raises an objection that why should I pay you the TCS amount where you are not liable to collect TCS? Right? Yes, Pratik ji, please tell your query. Pratik ji.
My question.
I think his voice is not audible. Not a problem. We'll come back to the query of Pratik ji once he gets his system stabilized. So I think now this point of 194Q and 206C1H and the comparison between them and who shall apply is clear. And we have also discussed that the onus to inform Mr. B lies with Mr. A. Because otherwise his working capital will be blocked for twice the amount than which should have been blocked. And for Mr. B, he is required to ensure that the payment will, after confirmation from Mr. A, all the payments which are being made to him is after deducting TDS. Otherwise, if deduction is not made even after communication, then again TCS provisions might get activated. Right? Now coming back to another thing which needs to be discussed in today's seminar is these two new sections which are being introduced from 1st of July is 206 AB and 206 CCA. Right? So what is this 206 AB? 206 AB states that where TDS is required to be deducted other than sections 192, 192A, 194B, BB, LBC or 194N, then rather let me or any sum amount paid by a person referred to him, then the rate shall be deducted at a higher rate. See here. For a specified person, what is specified person? Specified person means a person who has not filed the returns of income for both of the two assessment years relevant to the two previous years immediately prior to the previous year in which the tax is required to be collected or deducted, for which the due date of filing ITR under 139(1) has been expired and the aggregate of tax deducted at source and tax collected at source in his case is rupees 50,000 or more in each of the two previous years, right? So basically 206 AB is applicable when you are deducting tax for a specified person who has not filed their return of income for both the previous assessment years for which the due date has expired. Correct? And the other essential condition is aggregate of tax deducted at source and tax collected at source in his case is rupees 50,000 or more in each of these two previous years. Means the TDS or the TCS amount should exceed 50,000 in each of these two previous years. So if both these conditions are satisfied, one, not filing of TDS return for last two excuse me, non-filing of ITR for the last 2 years, or and the TDS amount and the TCS amount aggregate wise exceeding 50,000 in each of the two previous years, then the rate shall be deducted at the higher of twice the rate specified in the relevant provisions, twice the rates in force, or rate of 5%, whichever is higher. Right? Similar provision is there in 206 CCA, where the in cases of non-filers and the specified amount exceeding 50,000 in each of the years, it will be twice the rate specified in the relevant provisions and the rate of 5%. The point of rates in force is not there in 206 CCA. So I think someone has raised their hands. Please go ahead with their point before we move into the next point.
If in both the years the amount of TDS and TCS is below 50,000 rupees, and if the person has not filed the return, then whether he will be considered a specified person or not.
No, sir, because see here, the word used is and. So both the conditions needs to be satisfied simultaneously.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Right, sir? Any other question from anyone?
Hello, am I audible, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I think this question has been asked in the chat box itself as to whether the TDS under section 194Q would be deductible on the purchase value or the invoice value. That is the value which includes GST.
So I have already answered this, that it will be excluding GST.
Because I think this provision applies for other sections of TDS as well, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
As I correctly said, because for TDS, this law has been established that the TDS needs to be deducted on a excluding taxation value. It is on the taxable value and not on the final value.
Sir,
Yes, sir.
what happens to a new SSE who doesn't have 2 previous years? New
Then,
SSE who has first year return he has submitted, or he is doing business for the first year or second year. What happens in that case? Application of this section?
so then this section will not be applicable because then both the conditions are not being satisfied. So in that case, you will deduct TDS under normal provisions and not on a enhanced basis as under 206 AB or 206 CCA.
Good evening, sir.
Sir, once this section has applied, will it continue in perpetuity for year to year?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
This
This
50,000.
needs to be checked on an yearly basis for each of the relevant previous years until and unless an amendment is being enforced in this section.
So it has to be reviewed from year to year.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. 100%.
Hello, sir. May
Yes, sir.
may I tell something? That sir, it's very unlikely that if a person who is in business or profession and have a TDS of more than 50,000 and not filing their returns, and it would be very much applicable for the senior citizens who have a huge amount of interest income but not and TDS has been deducted from their accounts and they are not filing their returns properly. And these sections will bring more hardship to them, isn't it?
Sir, I agree, but the point is that even if they have a TDS exceeding 50,000 rupees, so in that case also, I think their income is also exceeding the specified amount for which they are liable to file their return. So I agree with your point that there will be a very remote possibility of cases where returns will not be filed. And as I speak, this notification is also there, which has been issued very recently, like 22nd of June, which talks about a functionality where you can check whether that person qualifies as a specified person or not. Right?
Yes,
So for compliance basis, you need to check it on a regular basis whether that person is as termed as a specified person or not. You just need to log into the new income tax site and check the compliance. There's a tab called compliance check for 206 AB and 206 CCA under the compliance portal.
Okay, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Sir, if belated return is filed in both the relevant 2 years, then whether there will be any problem?
There will not be problem until unless the return has been filed. The point is that supposedly for the last 2 years or for the last year itself, you are planning to file belated return, but you have not filed your belated return till now, and the time limit for due date of filing of return, that is 113.191, is expired, then you might be treated as a specified person,
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
right? Because the essential criteria here is that the return has not been filed and the time limit is expired. It does not state that the return has not been filed in 139.1 itself.
It means the relevance of section 139(1) is for deciding which financial year. That's all.
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you, sir.
But if it is filed by the with the permission of the commissioner under section 119(2),
So I didn't get your point.
if it is filed with the now, as the time is over, if it is filed with the permission of the commissioner under section 119(2),
So if the if you are filing under 119(2)(b),
to be exactly.
yes. So then that is treated as a return filed within the due date,
Exactly.
right? So in that case, it will be treated as a return filed within the due date. And if you are deducting TDS and if that particular return is for the last 2 financial years, then that will function accordingly.
Okay, sir.
Sir, this section has become applicable, is going to be applicable from 1st of July.
Yes,
From
sir.
when this amount of 50,000 to be accumulated for sale or purchase, whatever it is, 50,000, from when it is to be started computing?
So you're talking about this 50,000 thing?
Yeah, 50,000 thing. When from
So
when
that
you,
is for the last 2 financial years, last 2 previous years.
the 10 crore is for last 2 financial year, 50,000 is also for last 2 financial year. Okay.
10 crores is only for the last financial year.
I see.
That is a different section 194Q.
Hmm.
And there the another amount is 50 lakhs.
50
Here
lakhs,
the
yes.
amount is
50
here
lakhs,
the
50
amount
lakhs,
is
yes.
50,000.
50 lakhs,
It talks
50 lakhs.
about TDS and TCS amount,
No,
and that needs to be checked for the last 2 previous years.
No, I'm talking about 50 lakhs, sir. That is what I wanted to know.
50
Regarding
lakhs
50
needs
lakhs.
to be so borrowing the understanding which was issued in FAQs under 206C1H, that 50 lakh limit needs to be checked from 1st April itself.
1st April of this year.
1st
Of this
April
year.
of this year. Yes.
This year. I see, okay.
And
Right.
sir, the basic exemptions of 50 lakh is for each year, each and every year.
Yes, it's for each and every year. It's on a year-wise basis.
Thank you, sir.
So I was talking about this notification which has been introduced, where you need to go into the reporting portal. The principal officer of that particular person who is required to deduct TDS will register an ITDREIN number and then check the functionality, where the following details will be there: current financial year, PAN number as provided, the name of the person, the date of allotment, whether the person is a specified person or not. And there is also an option to be provided for a bulk search, where you can download a CSV file, put in up to 10,000 PAN numbers and upload it to check their status on a bulk basis. So this makes life a little easier for people who are required to deduct TDS and needs to check whether they need to make a compliance of higher deduction under 206 AB or a higher collection under 206 CA. Right? So are we good with this? So if that in that case, we'll move ahead with the next few provisions. Great. So the next thing which we so the 2 essential things which we have discussed till now is the cross applicability of 194Q vis-a-vis 206C1H, and the second thing which we have discussed is the applicability of 206AB and 206CCA. The third applicability which we need to check is that recently a 988 pager instruction has been introduced for filing the various ITRs, right? That is nothing but just an introduction to the filing the ITR under the JSON technology, which is a mere replacement of XML, right? There are few questions coming in which I'll take up post because I'll think I will be speaking up to 97, 30, 35 when I've kept the last 20-25 minutes to discuss all the questions, because I think there will be a lot of questions. So first let me complete this few points, and then we'll be taking up the questions, right? So yes, coming back to this, so this 988 page is just an instruction to filing of the ITRs under the new technology of JSON, which is a replacement of XML technology which we have been using till date. Why JSON has been introduced is to better apprehend the pre-filled data which is supposed to flow into the ITRs in terms of pre-filled dividend income, in terms of pre-filled capital gain details, in terms of other pre-filled data, pre-filled salary details and everything into the ITR forms, right? We'll talk about the changes which has been introduced in the ITRs vis-a-vis the last year. So the changes between the ITR which we have filed for assessment year 2021 and the assessment year 2022, which will 21-22, which will be filing now. One important change is that ITR 1 can now no longer be filed by a person whose TDS has been deducted under 194N. Right, 194N talks about a TDS on cash withdrawal exceeding 20 lakhs in certain non-filer cases and 1 crore in other cases. So where a TDS has been deducted under 194N, the person cannot file ITR 1. Otherwise, ITR 1 we all know can be filed only by an resident and ordinarily resident individuals and who's not a director and etc. I'm not going into those details. The only change is that a person who has his TDS deducted under 194N can also not file ITR 1. The next change is ITR 1 and ITR 4 can no longer be filed in a case where deferment of tax is there in cases of ESOPs. If you know that Finance Act 2020 has allowed for deferment of payment of taxation on ESOPs, employee stock option plans, been issued to the employees. So in that case also, till the time that deferment is there, the employee cannot use ITR 1 or ITR 4 in that case. Third thing we need to note is that there is no option to carry forward TDS deducted under section 194N. We all know that there is a section called 199 which says that the credit for tax deducted source shall be given in the assessment year in which such income is accessible. But since the TDS deducted under section 194N is not directly relatable to the income, it cannot be carried forward to any other year and needs to be taken credit of in the current year itself, right? Now, since dividend has been made taxable from 1/4/20, and earlier there was a special rate for dividend exceeding 10 lakh rupees. So consequential amendments has been made and suitable changes has been brought into the ITRs to incorporate this change of dividend taxability. Right, just give me a moment. Sorry. So consequential amendments has also been made in Schedule OS, other sources where now the dividend will be made taxable. And we all know that section 57 also allows for deduction of interest expenses up to an amount of 20% of the dividend income. So adequate addition has also been made in the section of deductions under OS for that. Right? EI where section 1034 was included is now redundant, so it has been done away with. Similarly, special income where 115 BBDA, which talked about the dividend exceeding 10 lakh rupees, has also been done away with. Also, dividend has been it has been made that the interest under section 234C will only be allowed in the quarters post which the dividend has been declared, right? So the essence of reporting the quarter-wise dividend in ITR 1 has been incorporated to understand the correct calculation of 234C, right? Since DDT has now become obsolete, so ITR 6 there was a scheduled DDT which has now been removed. In ITRs 2, 3 and 5, the effect of marginal relief which is being provided needs to be highlighted in the ITRs. A separate column for surcharge computed and marginal relief has been introduced where that detail needs to be provided. We all know for ITR 3 and 6, the threshold limit for tax audit in specified cases where 5% was not exceeding of total payments and total receipts in cash. The turnover earlier was 5 crore rupees. In Finance Act 2021, it has been enhanced to 10 crore rupees, but with effect from financial year 2021 itself. So that has also been adequately incorporated in ITR 3 and ITR 6, right? And if SSC has opted for section 115 BAC or BAD, which is the preferential taxation sections for companies, then the adjustment of unabsorbed depreciation as specified in those sections also needs to be specified, and adequate places has been provided in the ITS for that. And similarly, adjustment of carried forward losses, which are also no longer required to be carried forward if a person has opted for section 115 BAC or BAD, has been incorporated in ITR 3 and ITR 5. 80M, we all know, was a section which has been introduced by Finance Act 2020 with respect to dividend received from a subsidiary company by a holding company or by a foreign company or from a business trust. So the section, so the adequately ITR 6 has been amended to incorporate a schedule on deduction under 80M. Next is there was a schedule called DI. In last year, post-COVID, there was a concept of investments post March 20 up till a specified period, but still were being credited in 1920. So there was a schedule DI where all such details were required to be given. Since no such option has been provided for financial year 2021, the schedule DI has been done away with, right? And if you are exercising option 15 BAC or BAD, then obviously there is a specific option in the ITR to consent our decision of opting for these sections, right? The next point is date of donation, cash donation in case of deduction under 80 GGA. 80 GGA provides for deductions for the donations made by an assessee who is not earning income under the head PGBP. So deduction is not allowed for amount exceeding 2,000 rupees. So that schedule 80 GGA has been introduced in ITR 2, 5 and 6 to give details of such cash donations, including the date of donation. Right? Now, there are a few other points which I'll share with you. Section 112A, which is applicable for long-term capital assets, there are certain kind of amendments has been made where you need to where the nature of the security will also now come populated in the ITR. Many of us who were using the softwares were also earlier in the habit of putting in the nature of securities, but that was not being populated in the ITR. But now ITR has been adequately amended that the nature of securities will also get populated in the ITR. Right?
निकिता सुनो ना एक बार.
Then obviously schedule 5A, which is talking about the Portuguese civil code and everything. For that, the tax audit, the dates have been amended. So adequate ITR amendments has been done for that. Right. So these were some basic changes which has been made in ITR, most of which are technical in nature, and no major changes has been carried away in ITR. Right. So any discussions on the points with respect to ITR specifically, or else I will go forward and take the normal questions. Once again, I sincerely apologize that I'm not being able to speak much for the day. I had to kind of summarize because of my not so good health conditions with respect to my throat. So any particular questions with respect to the ITR?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Could you just enumerate once again on the nature of security that was introduced with respect to section 112?
So, sir, 112A talks about long-term capital gains on both shares, bonds, and everything, right? So this nature being the shares or the bonds or etc. earlier were not, if you see the ITR forms, the nature of securities was not getting populated in the ITR. Now the nature wise calculations will be populated in the ITR. Means the ITR will have now more detailed calculations of 112A.
So that is the sole change that was incorporated with respect to the section in the return, right?
Yes, sir. That is the only important change which has been incorporated with respect to 112A. There's a question from Prateek ji. If we sell 60 lakhs in March 22 and deduct TCS at 0.1% in entire money received in June 22 next year, but no TCS deducted again, is the assessee deemed non-compliant? Sir, the answer to this is yes, because the TCS is applicable in the year in which it is collected. So ideally, even if you have collected TCS, because the 0.1% will automatically come in the year when you must have received the payment, that will be in June 22 only. So you need to show it as the collection in June 22 and pay TCS accordingly. If you're talking about a scenario where you're selling it in March and receiving only the TCS amount in March and the balance amount in June, then also you need to hold it till next year or till the receipt of your principal payment and show it as a TCS for that year only. Is that okay?
Yes, okay, thank you.
Just a moment. The next question from Avinash is, has filing of returns been enabled for assessment year 21-22? Sir, I doubt. In the old portal before it has been changed, ITR 1 and ITR 4 had been enabled, but I don't think these are even working in the new portal itself. So we need to wait for certain time before we can actually go ahead with filing of our returns in the new portal. Harji has said how to deduct TDS under section 194Q if seller bills on 29th March and buyer receives good in the next financial year and records it as a purchases on 4th of April in the next year. So you are not concerned about the seller's bill. you are booking your purchase on 4th of April, right? So the law says that 194Q needs to be deducted on payment of credit, whichever is earlier. So you're crediting it on 4th of April with obviously adequate supporting material. If you're crediting it on 4th of April, then it will be applicable on the next financial year only and not on the financial year of the 29th March. Is that clear, Harshji?
Sir, what will be the pre-filled information in the ITR? Is there any list they have given? What sort of data they will provide in the pre-filled form?
Sir, they have given things like there is no particular list per se, but what they've given is few things which includes dividend income, which includes obviously your interest income, which includes your long-term capital gains, which includes your salary income and things like that. There is no specific list as such for the pre-filled data which has been provided. Nothing to my knowledge. I'll again check back on that, sir, and get back to you. But
regarding the investments made during the year,
so I don't think that has still been considered to be pre-filled, but I'll still check on that and get back to you. You can just drop me a mail on my ID ayush@basco.in and I'll get back to you on this, sir.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
Ayush ji,
Yes, sir.
suppose what happens is when you buy a share, suppose I have initially having a demat account with Share Khan. I've purchased Reliance share for 1,000 rupees. Okay, but before an year or so, I transferred my demat account to Motilal Oswal. Over there, the shares were transferred at the rate of 2,000 rupees. So at the time of calculation, and I sell it from Motilal at 2,500. So Motilal is showing me the profit of only 500 rupees LTCG. So what will be the LTCG calculation for income tax perspective for income tax
So
return?
the situation might
We
be
know that the
reversed
profit
as
is 1,500.
Situation might
Correct.
be reversed as well, where
Correct.
you have actually bought it for 2,000, it has been transferred at 1,000.
Correct.
And so that is basically a reporting error or a reporting miscommunication from Motilal Oswal or whatever the broker it might be. So in that case, you need to have adequate background working in your hand and disclose the correct information in the ITR, overriding the pre-filled data.
So basically, the pre-filled data that has been received will not be 100% correct as per the
Obviously,
situation.
sir. Obviously, because you know that there are certain limitations to these pre-filled data, right? There is a concept called FIFO. There is a concept of weighted average. We
Correct,
don't know how they are reporting their data, whether they are considering FIFO or not. What if there is a suppose there is a intraday transaction where I sell and where I short sell and then I cover it up. So whether that sell will be considered or from a existing investment or whether that will be considered intraday only.
Correct. That's a problem. That's a problem.
So there will be loads of problems from this, and obviously these systems will mature with time. Till the time these systems mature and take into consideration all these probable events or all these possibilities, if we find there is a mismatch, we need to report the correct data with an adequate background material and adequate background working in our hand.
Okay. Okay, thanks. And one more thing, you said that the dividend against the dividend income, 20% of the expenses are allowable, right?
That is
So
only
what?
against the interest expenses.
Okay, only against the interest expenses. Okay, thank you.
Satyajit ji has written under which section dividend is fully exempt and how it is to be shown in the ITR. Sir, dividend is no longer exempt. It is fully taxable, sir. Right? And needs to be shown as per your nature of receipt, whether it is a business income from you, if you're dealing in shares and securities, or whether if it is an IFOS for you. So it needs to be shown accordingly.
So far as dividend is concerned, is there is threshold limit till which there will be no TDS?
No, sir. No, sir. To which there will be no.
No TDS.
So for that, sir, there is a section 194. Wait, I'll show you, sir. Just give me a moment. I'll show you, sir. Yes, sir. If you can see, this is the section which is talking about the dividend, right? You're talking about the TDS on dividend, right, sir?
Now it has become applicable.
Yes, sir. So the amount here is 5,000 rupees, sir.
Up to 5,000 rupees, right?
Yes, sir.
And above 5,000 rupees, TDS will be on the full amount.
Above 5,000 rupees, TDS will be deductible on full amount.
On the full
But
amount.
there is no exemption or there is no basic slab for taxability.
Beg your pardon?
There is no basic slab for taxability, sir. Even if you are receiving 100 rupees dividend during the year, that 100 rupees is taxable. TDS might not be deducted, but it is taxable.
It is taxable in my file. In my return, it is taxable.
Yes, sir. Okay, so whether the now there's a question whether the limit of 10 crores of turnover as envisaged for the purpose of section 194Q will be inclusive of GST. The answer is no, sir. The turnover is calculated in its ordinary means without including GST. Am I clear, sir?
Yes, thank you.
Right, sir. Any other questions, sir?
Hello,
Yes, sir.
Ayushi, I have written one question, whether 194Q is applicable on payment of electricity bill.
So 194Q is applicable on payment of electricity bill. It's a very specific case because to whom you are paying the electricity bill?
To a distributing company, not generating company.
And whether that is a government entity or a non-government entity,
That is non-government entity.
it will be applicable, sir.
Applicable, no?
Yes.
Okay.
Sir, I have a question.
Ranjanji has
I
said
have-
whether 1035 is also redundant. The answer is yes, because it is also a dividend on mutual funds, which is also now taxable.
Hello, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir, you said that turnover for the 194Q will not include GST. Suppose if I purchase certain item which are not eligible for GST credit and it is falling under the limitation of section 17 subsection 5 of the CGST Act. This says there are certain services which are not eligible for the credit. Then in such a case, my turnover for purchase will include GST or not?
Sir, it is a very specific case, and whatever sections you have quoted for CGST Act, as I must assure you that it all has gone above my head. So what I'll request you is please give it to me in writing so that I can also consult with my GST partner and understand what exactly the matter is, and then get back to you.
Sir, I am putting the query in another way. Suppose if I have purchased the goods and I have not claimed GST credit on such purchases, that means I have taken the GST into cost. In such a case, will the purchase value will include GST because I have not claimed the GST credit? In such a case, what is your answer?
So the answer to this is simple. If the turnover in your profit and loss account includes a GST, then it will be included in your turnover as well.
Okay, thank you.
So that
I got my
clarifies.
answer. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Ranjanji, I'll repeat my email ID for everyone's convenience. It's AYUSH, my name, Ayush @ Basco, the company for which I work, It's B for Bombay, A for America, S for Singapore, C for Canada, O for ostrich. Ayush@basco.in.
Sir, this 194Q,
Yes, sir.
206C1H,
Right,
is
sir.
this applicable on hospitals, big educational bodies? Those who are rendering basically services, but they buy a lot of things. Hospitals, hospitals buy a lot of crores of medicine, lot of material for treatment.
Sir, to my understanding, the only exemption is if TDS or TCS is applicable in any other case.
Because there is related to goods purchase and sale. That word is there.
If TCS, in that case, TCS is also not applicable because I don't think medicinal supplies are covered under TCS, right?
There are big hospitals, big educational institutions.
So everyone is covered, sir. Everyone is covered, sir.
Everyone is covered. So far as buying of goods is concerned.
Both for buying and selling.
Buying and selling.
But in selling, it will not be covered to the extent because all the services, all the supplies other than the medicinal supplies will not be classified as goods, and this is applicable only for goods.
But hospitals, they buy and sell medicine.
So to that extent, the sections are applicable. That's what I'm saying, sir.
They sell medicine through some shop, not directly by the hospital. If the medicine is bought from some shop, and then it is charged to the customer.
So I didn't get your point.
Hospitals, whatever the bill they make for supplying medicine, they buy it from a medicine shop, which may be an in-house shop, which may be an outside shop. But on that, whatever the tax factor is there, that is covered. But so far as this TDS and this TCS is concerned, whether that is applicable or not.
So for that we have to check the definition of goods. So I'll check the definition of goods with respect to the specific point which you are telling, and then I'll get back to you, sir.
I think Ayush, you are completed.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Any more questions from anybody? Someone please ask. If anybody.
Sir, one question which I have received from Avinash ji and Shaikh Sinha ji, is electricity covered under goods for 194Q? Sir, there is no specific definition of goods under 194Q. So the good definition of good needs to be brought out from other acts which are similar acts, which is say Excise Act or other acts which defines the definition of such goods. And I think, to the best of my knowledge, electricity has been classified as a good there. So if someone would like to throw a light on that, because to my best of knowledge, electricity has been defined as a good. So you can check the Sale of Goods Act also, because to my understanding, Sale of Goods Act also follows its definition from the Central Excise Act, and Central Excise Act, we need to check again. Also, I will check again for convenience purpose, sir. Ranjanji has said that goods as per Sale of Goods Act.
Yeah, Ayush, I think you have taken all the questions from the chat box.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I have.
Okay. Ayush, I want to add one thing. For the liquor reseller, for which TDS has already been has to be deducted. There is a procedure of deducting TCS.
Yes. So in that case, no TDS will be deducted, sir.
So it is not coming under the new provision because it has to be deducted under 1% of the previous.
Yes, sir. So it is exempt from the new provisions of 194Q as well as 20.
Is there any clarification regarding the diesel, petrol, or any Indian gas distributor? Any specific exemption, because their retention of profit is very low. And after that, I think for each and every dealer distributor, this is applicable because their turnover, because the gross purchase by them is more than 50 lakhs. And the overall turnover of the company for all the companies is more than 10 crores. So for each of the say little small to small dealers, this provision will attract. Ayush, are you there? Ayush, yeah.
There was a problem with my system. Am I audible now?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. Yeah. So yes, in that case, means the original provision of TCS on liquor will apply. The new provisions of 2060-1H and 194Q will not be applicable.
Another thing, there was disturbance in the internet. Yeah, I was asking another question regarding the petrol pump dealers and the Indian gas dealers or the gas dealers, because they, for them, all of the small to small dealers, this will be applicable.
No, sir. If the purchase is being done by a central government or state government organizations, I'll again share that.
Yeah.
194Q thing with you. Wait.
Yeah, it is not an organization. It is a PSU. So it is applicable for PSU.
Sir, I'll share the definition. Just a moment. Is my screen visible, sir?
Not yet.
He's visible audible also.
Your screen is not yet visible. Yeah, now it is. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah. What it has been written that in which purchase of goods is carried out, not being a person as the central government may, by notification in the official gazette, specify for this purpose. To my understanding, there has been no notification as such, but considering the notifications in similar cases, PSUs are generally excluded from these definitions.
Yes, because till date, no notification has yet been received.
Yes, sir.
Because only a few days are left. So it will be applicable for 1st July.
Sir, what we can do is that we can obviously wait for few more days probably, and if nothing comes till the date of applicability, then we have to apply it for everyone, sir.
All right.
What I think Suman is asking for is that PSU is selling and some individual person, a partnership or a company.
Yeah, dealer. I am asking for on behalf of the dealers.
I think sir has gone mute.
So no, he is asking for the dealers. What will be the position of the dealer so far as these two sections are concerned?
Yeah.
So it is applicable as of now, sir.
It is applicable as of now, but regarding PSUs, I think notification will be expected within few days. So yes, something can be highlighted, can be made on these issues, micro level issues.
Yes,
so another thing, this is basically a taxation of all purchases and sale. If I am not wrong.
Exactly. All purchases and sales above a threshold limit.
Yeah, above, because this is a penny amount. Either of the two route will be taxable. Because if you are passing the 50 lakhs, the purchase or sale, and if you are buying from a purchaser who's above 10 crores, then you are into it.
Yes, sir.
So anyway around, but regarding reconciliation, see, this TCS will again bring about a human cry, because reconciliation, because the income tax authority will go by the TDS method. They will go by the thumb rule of purchase and sale. Then another reconciliation statement required to be submitted to the income tax department as well as the GST department, because again another reconciliation statement will be now required.
So we have already discussed this when I think you remember when we were having a discussion on 2061H.
Yes.
This question has cropped up time and again, and we have all agreed that this reconciliation will be a big task.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying. So is the department again coming out with any software from the income tax department itself?
Like, nothing to my knowledge as of now, but I hope it does come up, because then our task will be a little bit easier.
Partho,
Hello. Hello.
Yeah.
Yes.
Should we close now?
Yeah, I'll request any of the participants, if you want to have any of the questions, speak
Hello,
directly to the
Ayushi.
speaker.
Yes, sir.
You can put yourself in a unmute and you can speak.
Hello,
Huh, sir.
Yeah.
Ayushi. Just I want to know what is the necessity of introducing this TDS provision when TCS is already there, because it
Sir,
creates
the necessity was the government understood this reconciliation issues and the issues that TCS been introduced only on receipt basis and not on a payment or credit, whichever is earlier basis. So just to reduce such reconciliation matters and to enhance its gambit of operations from the buyer's perspective as well, and to tap more and more transactions into this compliance mode, this has been introduced. So but there are more of cons in it, that the compliance has now become twofold. You need to get the confirmation and everything, but the basic intent was to reduce that reconciliation issues which was arising out of receipt basis method under 206C1H. So I think if I have the permission of the chair, then we can have a few more questions if someone is there to ask. Otherwise, we can close the session.
Good evening, sir. This is Lokesh Agarwal, sir.
Yes, sir. Good evening. Bataiye.
Sir, I mean, you have told that in the turnover of 10 crore, the GST portion will not be included. But there are few others who are saying that it will be included. I am sorry to say that, but
Sir, no, there is nothing to be sorry about, sir. We all have personal opinions and we all have our own understanding of the law. So to my understanding, if it is forming the part of the turnover as per the guidance notes issued for the profit and loss account, in some GST, like sir has taken an example for which there is no output input credit which has been taken. So so those GSTs will be included, sir.
Okay, sir.
Anything which is forming part of the cost will be included, sir.
Okay, sir.
But again, someone else might have a different interpretation, and I most humbly say that I might even stand corrected, because I am not someone who has written the law, and I am not someone
Yes, sir.
who is the only who is the only authority, sir. It's all opinion-based work, sir.
Sir,
But
under
that's
section.
Ayush, you want to say, I'm Sumantra Gua. I want to
Hello,
say.
sir.
Hello. Yeah, I was
we
actually.
acknowledge the yes, want to go.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask Ayush that if it is, we can adopt either of the methods, inclusive method or exclusive method. Huh? So taxable turnover in PL account is normally when we talk about turnover, it is exclusive method. Huh? So, but if anyone wants to keep books of accounts in inclusive method, then the GST that is paid has to be debited to PL account. Huh?
If books of accounts are kept in inclusive method, then also we need to reduce the GST for which the input has been taken, credited off, and then determine our turnover. Because
that is true. Because because even if we inflate the credit side of the PL, the debit side will get reduced by the input credit, which will be in the receivable account or whatever.
So that is just a method of showing the books of accounts.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it is an exclusive method only, sir.
Yeah. True. Absolutely.
Right, sir.
Yeah, right.
So I hope you are traveling safe, sir.
No. I'm traveling from my office to my home only. That is the only issue. Otherwise, I got stuck up with some work. That is why I couldn't attend your seminar. I mean, right from the beginning. That is the. I should be excused for that.
Yes, sir. Always, sir.
So Partha, another once I repeat, if anybody has any question, if they can unmute themselves and ask the question to the speaker directly.
Sir, under section 194Q, TDS is required to be deducted on the purchase value. Purchase value, whether purchase value means invoice value, and invoice value also includes GST.
No, sir. I again repeat, for TDS, it is a clearly stated law that the TDS needs to be deducted on the taxable value excluding GST, sir.
I think we are already in the time of ending our session. So I'll request our Deputy Convener Partho to offer a vote of thanks and call these VCMs at the end. Partho, are you there?
Ah,
I can't find Partho. I think Partho has logged out.
Suman, why can't? Okay, Suman, on behalf of our study circle, I, Manoj Ghosh, I am giving a thanks to Mr. CA Ayush Goel and to you and Devan Patro, Mr. Sahu, and all other listeners or chartered accountants who have participated.
Hello, hello.
Can you hear?
Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible. Yes.
Actually, I've lost the connection. Actually.
Okay, you give the thanks to the delegates.
You end this session with a
Okay,
vote of
okay, okay. Thank you so much. Honorable Sri Shuman Choudhury, the convener of this meeting.
Partho, you are not audible. You are yes. Can you add more volume to your sound?
I can hear Partho.
Partho, carry on.
I can hear Partho. Yeah.
Okay. Shall I continue?
Yeah, continue.
Yes, please.
Honorable C.A. Shuman Choudhury, the convener of this meeting. Honorable C.A. Sunil Sahu, Chairman EIRC, though he is not present here right now. Honorable C.A. Devan Patro, Treasurer EIRC. Honorable and our learned speaker, Honorable C.A. Ayush Goel, and all the honorable seniors and the respected members present with us. It is my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. I, on behalf of Vidhannagar CA Study Circle and on behalf of all the members and audience present here, and obviously also on my own behalf, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to you, Speaker, sir, for sparing your valuable time and sharing your impeccable knowledge and views on such important topics today. Under the present ongoing situation of COVID-19 pandemic outbreak, we all are going through a very, very hard time where the existence of the entire human species is at stake. But that has not spared us from being challenged with a lot of new changes introduced by the authorities.
Thank you, Partho. Thank you for your closing remarks. And we did once again, thanks to Ayush from our end. Thanks, Manojda, for the entire period you have been with us, and to all our participants. And as per formality, and also acknowledge the presence of Sumanta Guha, who has been with us.
Exactly, sir. I would like to express my thanks and gratitude to you for explaining the things in such details and in such a lucid and interactive manner, which are going to be extremely helpful for all of us in the next coming days. So thank you very much, sir, for your fantastic deliberation. Go ahead, please.
All right. Thank you, Ayush. Again, and I am calling this meeting to the end. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ayush, for helping the profession in such a manner, time and again through your deliberations.
July, we can have a physical meeting where you can facilitate our learned speaker with a memento, because in this virtual, everything is becoming virtual.
Yeah. Next time you should think of a memento. Next time we should memento actually.